This is a Fox News alert. The Secretary of Defense is warning every single American about ISIS.
ISIL is as sophisticated and well-funded as any group that we have seen. They're beyond just a terrorist group. They marry ideology, a sophistication of strategic and tactical military prowess. They are tremendously well-funded. Oh, this is beyond anything that we've seen. So we must prepare for everything.
He says we must prepare for everything. You can hear it in his voice. The Pentagon is in a crisis mode. Meanwhile, across the Potomac River, the lights are out at the White House. No one is home. President Obama is still on vacation. And today, he was back on the golf course. That is, despite getting slammed from the left and the right. Democrats and Republicans both slamming him about playing golf yesterday. And that was just minutes after talking to the nation about the beheading of an American journalist. And former UN Ambassador John Bolton joins us. Good evening, sir. The optics matter, but it also, I mean, it's really hard to be paying a lot of attention to these issues if you're not around.
I think that's an important point. But honestly, I wouldn't mind if the president played golf morning, noon, and night if he cared about the national security of the United States. That's the real problem. He doesn't focus on it. He doesn't understand it. Even after 5.5 years of on-the-job training, he still doesn't get it. And that's why this news conference today between Secretary Hagel and General Dempsey is so incredibly contrasted with what the president said yesterday. The Pentagon, as you say, is on full alert. And I don't think the president yet understands the nature of the ISIS threat.
Is it that he doesn't understand it, or that he's just incredibly rude? I mean, that the American people really care about this stuff. This is a well-funded, very fluid situation because they can move around the world quite quickly. You know, why isn't, or is it the fact that he called him JV in January? Doesn't he get it?
Well, he hasn't apparently changed his mind. He said yesterday, you know, ISIL speaks for no religion. It has an ideology of no value to human beings. That's just fundamentally repudiated by the reality on the ground. And if you don't understand the nature of the threat, you're never going to have a strategy to deal with it. I think we've got, as the briefing today said, a real crisis. We need a strategy and response. I think the strategy ought to be to eliminate the threat, not to contain it, but to eliminate it, as Secretary Kerry himself has said.
Well, is it possible? I mean, it's like, a lot of people are appalled that he's playing golf, and I must confess he's playing, that I would like to see my president pay more attention to him. Maybe, is it behind the scenes? Maybe he's doing a lot of that?
I think the golf is the wrong thing to focus on. I found a picture earlier today of Dwight Eisenhower during World War II laughing on the front green of the St. Andrews golf course in Scotland. And you could say, what's Eisenhower doing on a golf course? And the answer is life goes on. And if we had a president anywhere close to Dwight Eisenhower's capabilities, it wouldn't bother me. We should focus on what the real problem is, which is a commander-in-chief who's not competent to do the job.
When you say he's not competent, maybe he's speaking to Prime Minister Cameron 6 times a day. Maybe he's doing these things. And maybe he's speaking to Secretary Hagel. Maybe he's speaking to General Dempsey. That
would not be the pattern of the last 5.5 years. But even if he were, at some point you have to produce a strategy. I think there is a strategy to defeat the Islamic State, as they now call themselves. And I think it's important to do it sooner rather than later, before they consolidate territory, before they become a magnet for other terrorists. There are estimates, for example, that 500 of the terrorists they now have are British citizens. We don't know how many are Americans. These are people who could come back to Europe, come back into this country with a valid passport they already have. That is a real threat for the United States.
What is President Obama's strategy on ISIS?
I don't think he has a strategy. I think that's the problem. I think he's driven from one tactical response to another. So you're worried about 30 or 40,000 Yazidis being massacred by ISIS, and so you authorize airstrikes. You're worried about some American personnel in Erbil. You're worried about the Mosul Dam being opened and flooding the valleys down toward Baghdad. And so there are pinprick responses to it. But none of this constitutes a strategy. He hasn't defined our objectives. I think it should be to eliminate ISIL. He hasn't tried to define how he wants to go about that. There is no evidence he's building an international coalition. I still don't think he understands the internal political situation in Iraq or Iran's influence there. It's just completely disconnected from the reality that is evolving minute by minute on the ground.
Ambassador, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
And tonight we have new information about that failed mission to